before coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page, if you could do me a quick favor, see that little black subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that black subscribe button. Really does help our audience grow, really does help our channel grow, really does help and mean more than you could possibly know. So go ahead, hit that little black subscribe button. Also, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet 50 on any game, get $250 in free bets. Thank you again to Betfred. Thank you again to you. Now, here is the video that you came here for. Do want to talk a little bit of college hoops, basically, because bottom line is, look, I think most of the sports world over the last couple days, even those of us that are more in the college space as opposed to the pros, we've obviously been focused on the NFL draft. And we all love the NFL draft. I think I saw first round at like 12, 13, 14 million viewers, something like that. But what I want to do now is kind of get back to the college hoops, kind of just the spring stuff that is going on right now. If you listen to Monday's Aaron Torres pod, we talked a lot about two specific topics. One, Hunter Dickinson. I believe we're probably starting to get pretty close to a decision from him. He's taken what we believe to be the 5 visits that he plans on taking. I don't think there will be another one, and I would expect a commitment soon. On Monday's show, we also talked about Ron Holland, a 5-star forward, had been committed to Texas. He decommits and where he could end up. But what's wild is, and this is crazy because it's May 1st, 2023, May 2nd, May 3rd, whenever you're listening to this, there is another like really high leverage, high impact guy that is available, a guy that we talked about 2 weeks ago, have not circled back on since, but we need to now because there is some new information. That player is Mackenzie Mgbako. Mackenzie Mgbako is a 5-star member of the class of 2023 high school basketball. So basically about to graduate and again, getting ready to enroll in college. He was a McDonald's All-American, Nike Hoop Summit, was a guy that was committed to Duke, but we obviously talked about him about 2.5 weeks ago because right as the spring really started to ramp up, he ends up decommitting from Duke and reopening his recruitment. And so at the time, we talked about a couple schools that made sense. I gave you a list. And in the last couple days, Mackenzie Mgbako has actually cut down that list to 4 schools, 3 of which I suspected he would be on his final list. The 4 schools, according to Adam Zagoria from Zags Blogs, SNY, he will visit St. John's, Kansas State, Indiana, and Louisville. Now, it's worth noting, he actually took his visit to St. John's this weekend. That is complete. As I record here, he is in Lawrence, Kansas, visiting with Bill Self and the Jayhawks. And so what I want to do now, talk a little bit about Mgbako, the 4 schools, what the pitches I think are, and ultimately just kind of give you how I think everything stacks up here over the next couple weeks as we get set for his commitment. First of all, in terms of Mgbako, listen, I've said it. I think he might be the best NBA prospect in this high school class of 2023, okay? 6'8", big forward, super athletic, strong, really has everything that you would want from that new age forward. Big, can handle the ball, can step out and hit threes. He was phenomenal, by the way, in the Nike Hoop Summit game. I think it was actually like a day or two before he decommitted from Duke, but finished with a game-high 22 points and just a really good player. Has every measurable you want from an NBA perspective, has every intangible you want from an NBA perspective. And I truly believe, I don't think there's a lot of freshmen in this 2023 class that are going to have an impact on college basketball next year, but I do think that he is one of them. And so what I want to do now is talk about the 4 schools, which ones make sense, which ones don't. My guess is he's probably considering all 4, or why take the visits? So let's get into those 4 and what I kind of think the strengths and weaknesses are of each. Let's start with the first school, the school that he actually visited this past weekend, a school that I've talked about a lot this spring, and that is St. John's, coached by Rick Pitino, my guy. Oh, you can get your Big Rick Energy t-shirt at AaronTorresOnline.com. By the way, we'll have a link in the show description below. But I'll say this, is that, Rick Pitino picked up another nice commitment on Monday, guard named Glenn Taylor, 11.5 points per game out of Oregon State. But I have had a few St. John's fans reach out to me like, Torres, when is that first big thing? Like, when is the first major monumental program changing thing coming? And I'll say this, first of all, I think even just getting a visit from this kid and being in his Final Four, I think is a great first step. Now, listen, this is big boy college basketball. There are no participation trophies. You don't get a blue ribbon for finishing in second place. But it was interesting over the weekend because Mackenzie Mgbako did share some stuff on social media, on his Instagram page about his visit from St. John's. And I give St. John's credit because it appears as though they're rolling out the red carpet. It appears as though, first of all, they're in the mix again. I know St. John's recruited him the first time around. I don't think they're in the Final Four if Mike Anderson is still the head coach. So they're in the Final Four, and it was clear this weekend what their pitch was to him. You saw the pictures on Instagram. Andrew Slater, a great recruiting writer, by the way, who is close to the Mgbako family, also put out a couple pictures that were shared with Mackenzie that he then shared on social media. Kind of the cliche, his picture next to the Statue of Liberty in the Empire State Building. There was a little hashtag like New York City's basketball team. And so I bring it up because St. John's is essentially giving the recruiting pitch that I said they would and they should when he first announced his decommitment from Duke. He's a New York kid, plays basketball in in New Jersey, but he's from the tri-state area. And basically what I think their recruiting pitch to him is essentially this. Listen, we're in the process of a rebuild. Why don't you come in your hometown, be the face of this rebuild, play for a Hall of Fame coach in the world's most famous arena? You can go anywhere else, but there's only one place that you can become a hometown hero. And there's only one place that you can go where, you're the hometown hero and you will be forever remembered in a positive way if this program gets rebuilt by this coaching staff like we all will. Listen, you can go to Kansas and compete for a national championship, just like pretty much every player that has gone to Kansas over the last 25 years has. You'll be great. You'll be incredible. You'll still get drafted, all that good stuff. You can go to Indiana. You can go to Louisville, play for great coaches there. Certainly a great coach at Indiana and Mike Woodson. We'll see about Kenny Payne, but Kenny Payne does have an NBA background behind him. And you could go there and have success, but there's only one place that you will forever be an icon. There's only one place that you can forever be the guy that is the face of a rebuild, and that's here at St. John's in your hometown. I'm sure they're pitching mom and dad can come see every home game. You can go home on the weekends and see them. And I love this pitch from St. John's. Now, will it work? There's 3 other schools in the mix. It remains to be seen. But again, this kid is going to be a one and done, okay? He's only playing college basketball for 1 year. And so you could go to Louisville and be another guy for a great program. Indiana, be another guy for a great program. Kansas, another guy for a great program. You come here as a New York City kid. We're now on a 23-year streak of 0 NCAA tournament wins. Come here, help us get to the tournament in year 1, help us rebuild this program, and you will forever be an icon here. Last thought on Mackenzie Mgbako from the St. John's perspective, and we'll get to the other teams. I am told by people, let's just say that NIL will not be an issue. And I know small Catholic school, whatever, compared to 2 big state schools, 3 big public schools, if you include Louisville, NIL is not going to be a factor at St. John's. We all know that since Rick Pitino got there, they have increased a lot of different things, including that NIL pool. And so I do believe that, they'll be able to compete with any dollar amount that anybody throws out. So that's the St. John's perspective. I think it's the most interesting one. And beyond that, let's talk about the other 3 schools that I do believe are a factor here. Let's start with Kansas. As I record here late Monday, Mackenzie Mgbako is in fact on a trip to Kansas. And I think Kansas conversation kind of sells itself, right? We're great every year. Like St. John's, we have a Hall of Fame coach. The difference is, come here, you're a missing piece. We actually need a guy just like you. But then 2, come here, and of your 4 finalists, this is probably the only place that realistically you can win a national championship next year. Because you look at Kansas, first of all, coming off another Big 12 regular season title. That's just what Bill Self does. But you look at the pieces that are starting to come together on this Kansas squad. I like this group a lot. DeJuan Harris is back from this past year and the 2022 national championship team. We'll see about Kevin McCullough, who's testing the NBA draft waters. They just added Nick Timberlake, a 6'4" guard, who, by the way, St. John's wanted, UConn wanted, North Carolina wanted. Everybody in college basketball wanted this kid. Average about 17.5 points per game, 43% three-point shooting. He is now at Kansas. They also just added Arterio Morris, big-time guard, former McDonald's All-American who played last year at Texas. They have KJ Adams down low, and Mackenzie Mgbako, however you pronounce whatever. Mackenzie Mgbako, he would be one of two marquee players that Kansas is very much after late in this cycle. One is Mgbako. We're talking about him right now. Two is obviously Hunter Dickinson, which we talked about a lot on Monday's show. And so we'll see if the Hunter Dickinson thing comes to fruition. But if you look at Mgbako, the backcourt is set. The front court, if they don't get Hunter Dickinson, still has last year's starting center and KJ Adams. He's a little bit undersized. If you could get Hunter Dickinson, you take him. But the one thing that they are missing, that big wing, that difference maker at the 4, which they had this year with Jalen Wilson, which Grady Dick kind of played some 4 and some small ball lineups when Jalen Wilson was off the court. They have had a lot of good players on the wing through the years. Andrew Wiggins, Kelly Oubre, Xavier Henry, for those of you who are old enough to remember that name. Mackenzie Mgbako, come be the next one, compete for a national championship. And oh, by the way, we might get you and Hunter Dickinson, and we're probably entering next year #1 in the country. So come here, do it, be part of what we're doing. That is my pitch. That is my guess on their pitch. And like everywhere else, I think NIL is not going to be an issue if that's where he wants to go. Really quickly, the other two. Louisville, they were the one from day one that was linked to this kid. And for people who don't know why, Nolan Smith is the lead assistant at Louisville, their lead recruiter. He was actually Mgbako's lead recruiter when he was the assistant at Duke. And so there's a pre-existing relationship. And, listen, the second that Mackenzie Mgbako, entered the portal. I was going to say enter the portal, but the second Mackenzie Mgbako decided to reopen his recruitment, Louisville was the school that naturally made sense. Now, when I look at this one, what I would say is, I get it. I do. I guess what I would say is, I'll just say this. I'm not saying it won't be Louisville. What I am saying is I've never gotten the impression that it is as much of a lock as some people have wanted to make it seem. On the one hand, yes, I know. One and done. Like I said, no matter where you go, you're going to be a top 10 pick next year, no matter what. And I get the ties to Nolan Smith. But if you're going to go somewhere that is in a rebuild, why wouldn't you go to the hometown school, be the hometown hero, play in the world's most famous arena at Madison Square Garden? To me, that makes sense. If you're going to be the face of a rebuild, you might as well do it for a Hall of Fame coach in your hometown, as opposed to a school at Louisville that, listen, Louisville has very much upgraded the talent on that roster this offseason. They added Sky Clark, the transfer from Illinois. They added Dennis Evans, a 5-star center from out here in California, about an hour from where I live. They've added Trenton Flowers, a really good reclassification kid from the class of 2024. But Mackenzie Mgbako would still be the face of that rebuild. I guess my question is, do you trust that Kenny Payne will have things significantly better in year 2? Are you going to be playing for a ACC title, at the very least an NCAA tournament bid? Because if you're going to a place that is starting from ground zero, I would go to the place, if you're starting from the bottom, to use a bad Drake pun, right? If you're starting from the bottom, go to the place that at least you're going to play for a Hall of Fame coach that has developed prospect after prospect after prospect, but we will see the impact that Nolan Smith and that relationship has going forward. Finally, with Indiana, this one was kind of a shot out of left field. I mean, we have our Torres on accounts. We have about 13, 14 of them now. By the way, Torres on St. John's, Torres on a bunch of other ones, Kentucky, Arkansas, whatever. We do have a Torres on Indiana account run by an Indiana student. And I texted him when we got the news that Mgbako would make these 4 visits. And I said to him, I said, are you surprised by this? He's like, yeah, I'm very surprised. I was not expecting this at all. So we'll see if Indiana can get in the mix. And one thing I will say about Indiana, they have a very intriguing group right now that is really probably a piece away from being really good. Kalel Ware is a very interesting piece, transferring in from Oregon. Trey Galloway, Xavier Johnson was just declared eligible for this season. Got a waiver because he was out of eligibility, but because he missed so many games, he was allowed to have the extra year in Bloomington this year. So we'll see if Indiana can make up ground, but I'll just say, man, you look at these 4 schools, it is fascinating, and you look at these 4 schools, and it'll be curious to see what happens. This is just speculation on my part. I don't have it, incredibly sourced. If I had to guess, because people have asked me, of those 4, I feel like I know Louisville was in the driver's seat early, but I think Kansas and St. John's are probably the 2 to watch out for. If I had to make a bet, I'd say Kansas, but I don't even know if this kid fully knows right now. But Kansas has a lot to offer. All 4 schools have a lot to offer, but that is what I'm thinking for Mackenzie Mgbako. So we will see. We will keep you updated, and we will have some reaction when he actually commits. But Mackenzie Mgbako currently in the middle of his visits, and I think this kid is a difference maker wherever he ends up.